some perspective about how crucial this visit is, and for that I'm joined by our guest, Mr. Harsh Pant. He is a distinguished fellow and head of the Observer Researchers Foundation Strategic Studies Program. A very warm welcome to you, Mr. Pant. Let me begin by asking you, let me quote Gotabaya's first solo interview as the president. Gotabaya Rajapaksa has stated that leasing the Hambantota port to China for 99 years was a mistake made by the previous government, and he has urged India, Singapore, Japan and Australia to not be fearful of Chinese intervention and invest in Lanka. Do you see this realization as a turning point in the Modi-Rajapaksa dynamics?
Well, I think it started happening much before Gotabaya became president. When this deal was struck, he was explicit in making his opposition very clear. And I think the realization is in the wider Sri Lankan political and strategic community that by putting all their eggs in China's basket, which Gotabaya's elder brother seems to have done during his tenure, Sri Lanka had made a mistake. The debt crisis that Sri Lanka faces, the whole idea of debt trap emerged out of Sri Lanka, perhaps is a recognition of the fact that Sri Lanka needs to change course, and therefore Rajapaksa is now being very pragmatic. Gotabaya Rajapaksa is being very pragmatic when he suggests that other stakeholders need to participate in Sri Lanka's economic development.
All right, fair way to put it. Be recalibrating China's terms of engagement or the terror threats posed by radical Islam that Sri Lanka faced during the Easter bombings. What are the possible points of convergence for India and Sri Lanka at the moment now?
Well, I think there are multiple points of convergences, and therefore there's the kind of dynamic that you see between India and Sri Lanka today, despite the victory of Gotabaya Rajapaksa, who at one point in time was considered to be not so favorably inclined to India, points towards that. So security is one such aspect where if you look at terrorism, whether you're looking at the ethnic minorities in Sri Lanka, whether you're looking at the Indian Ocean as a zone of peace, I think all bring India and Sri Lanka together. Certainly there are issues on which there are differences as well, but I think at this point in time, Sri Lanka perhaps looks at India as a favorable partner, as a partner that can help Sri Lanka in diversifying its economic and strategic engagement beyond China, which seems to have taken a much larger role than perhaps many in Sri Lanka had anticipated when China started entering Sri Lanka in early 1990s.
All right, Mr. Pant, yesterday the MDMK chief Wion was detained by the Delhi police for protesting at the Jantar Mantar, demanding that any permission granting entry to Gotabaya be revoked because he has the blood of Tamils on his hands. Do you think it's a tricky situation for the Indian government since Gotabaya is being viewed as a divisive figure among the Tamils?
It is always tricky, I think, for New Delhi to balance its domestic political considerations and its strategic considerations when it comes to its neighbors, and in particular with Sri Lanka's case and the case of Tamils. But I think India has been very carefully navigating that.